Welcome, traveler. Before we begin our journey into one of the worst times to be married, I have a small request. If you're enjoying these deep dives into the lives of people from long ago, please consider subscribing to the channel. And in the comments, let me know where in the world are you listening from and what time is it for you right now. Whether you're relaxing at home in Austria, winding down in Canada, or drifting off somewhere in Italy, I'm grateful that you're here. You are 13, the day your father tells you who you'll marry. He does not ask. He does not soften the words. You are folding washed wool over the fence post, pinning it in the early spring sun, when he walks past and says, "You'll go to Janen's at month's end." That's all. No blessing. No pause to see your face. Just a sentence that falls over your life like frost, cold and final. You do not cry. You've seen what happens to girls who cry. Your older cousin did, and her mother called her an ungrateful cow in front of the entire parish. So you keep your fingers moving, the lanolin stinging your split knuckles, and you nod like you understand. Janen is 30, maybe more. He lost a wife to fever last winter. He needs hands. Your father owes favors. That's the whole shape of it. No one explains further. Your mother doesn't speak of it that day, only checks your shift and hair with more attention than usual. That night, you sleep beside your sister, under the scratchy wool blanket you've shared since you were small. She whispers, "Will you still visit?" And you say yes, even though you know you won't. Brides don't visit. Not peasants, not girls like you. You stare at the ceiling rafters and trace the knots in the wood with your eyes, counting them like stars you'll never touch. The house creaks. Someone coughs in the next room. The dog snores near the hearth. Everything is the same, but everything is changed. You have been moved from one ledger column to another, from daughter to wife, from cost to repayment. The day of the marriage is muddy. The thaw came early and turned the footpath to the chapel into a sucking, boot-stealing mess. You wear your best tunic, brown patched at the sleeve, and the belt your mother dyed with walnut husks. You don't feel pretty. You feel small and hollow, and watched, Janen stands beside you, like a tree someone forgot to cut. His beard is patchy, and he smells faintly of last week's onions. He does not touch you. The priest, distracted and late, mutters through the Latin rites in a voice so quick, even the Virgin Mary would need to squint. A few neighbors gather at the edge of the chapel, but they do not smile. They are here to witness, not to celebrate. There is no music, no garlands, only the crack of wind, and your father placing a round of cheese into Janen's hand as your bride price. The cheese is more valuable than you. It took months to cure. The bed is straw stuffed into a sack that smells faintly of mildew. Janen says nothing as he closes the shutter and drops his cloak on the floor. He unlaces your shift with hands that are thick and red from work, and when he pulls the cloth from your shoulders, he doesn't look you in the eye. You keep your breath shallow. You try to remember how your mother looked when she birthed your youngest brother. Silent, clenched, distant. You try to become her. He is done before the candle burns down. When it is over, he rolls over and sleeps. You lie still and feel the blood cooling on your thighs. No one told you what it would feel like. Just that it must happen, and that it would be over fast. The cloth, when you show it to the women the next day, is stained enough to satisfy them. They nod, one even smiles. "A proper start," she says. You rise early, before the sun, because he does. Your new home is smaller than your father's, but it has a fence and a shed for the goats. You draw water from the well, crush oats for the meal, tend the fire. You learn how he likes his food, burnt porridge, salted lard, never too warm. He does not beat you, which is more than some women can say. You hear them at the well, comparing bruises like weather. You stay quiet. You do not complain. You keep your eyes on the path, and your hands moving. When he comes to you at night, you go still and wait for it to pass. Your body becomes something separate from you, like the firewood or the kettle. A thing to be used, then left. By midsummer, your belly begins to swell. You do not tell him. He notices anyway. One night, as he removes his boots, he grunts, "If it's a boy, we'll keep the goat. If it's a girl, we'll name her after your mother. She was a good woman." It is the longest sentence he has ever spoken to you that wasn't about tools or weather. You nod. You don't smile. You go outside and sit in the dirt by the goat pen, one hand on your stomach, one hand on the earth. The stars are out. You count them again, like you used to when your sister was beside you. You think of how small you are beneath them, how far away your girlhood already feels, like it belonged to someone else. Time bends. The baby kicks, your hips ache. You work through it because there's no one to cover your tasks. You bleed a little in the 6th month, but tell no one. There is no healer nearby. If something happens, it will happen. You know this. You've seen women scream until their eyes went white. You've seen tiny bodies buried behind the chapel with no name. You do not pray. You whisper to the child inside you, not words of love, but warnings. Be quiet. Be strong. Don't cry too much. You want to say more, but there are no words left for softness. You used them all up before your first blood came. Your sister visits once, near harvest. Her belly is round too. Her man has more teeth, but not more kindness. You sit together near the garden and eat onions dipped in salt. You do not cry. She does. Just once, when you mention your mother's spinning wheel. She says it broke last week, and that your father didn't fix it. You say nothing. There is nothing to say. This is what marriage is: a trade, a gamble, a sentence spoken by men and endured by women. You look at her and see yourself. She looks at you and sees what's coming. The pain begins in the night, sudden and low, curling inside you like a worm. You do not wake Janin. There is no point. He is a man who works until his limbs forget how to move. When he sleeps, he sinks into it like a stone. You bite the corner of the blanket and ride the wave. It fades. You lie still, watching the firelight sputter against the hearth wall. The second pain comes hours later, sharper. It knocks the wind from you. This time, you grunt, quietly, a wordless plea. He does not stir. By dawn, your shift is soaked through, and your knees will no longer hold you upright. You crawl to the door and call for help. The neighbor woman is already outside feeding her hens when she sees you. Half collapsed near the threshold, your mouth dry and hands shaking. She moves fast. She shouts for her daughter, tells her to run for the midwife. You are carried back inside, stripped of your shift, laid on old wool, and given a cup of boiled yarrow to drink. It's bitter. Everything is bitter now. Your breath, your throat, your hope, the pain comes in waves. You try to be silent, but your body betrays you. You scream once, loud enough to startle the hens. Janin appears in the doorway and watches for a moment. Then he leaves, back to the field. There is nothing he can do. Or perhaps nothing he chooses to. The labor lasts the day, and well into the next night. The midwife comes with her apprentice and a knife sharpened on both sides. They tell you not to push too early. They slap your thigh when you cry too loud. You'll scare the baby, one says. You want to ask who is scaring you, but your tongue is thick and useless. The room smells of blood, piss, sweat, and crushed lavender. You drift in and out of yourself. Once you see your mother in the rafters. She says nothing. She only watches. The baby comes near dawn, wet, gray, screaming. A girl. The midwife mutters, "Well, better than nothing." They place the child on your chest, and you do not know what to feel. Relief, fear, regret. You stare at her face, wrinkled, red, unfamiliar, and wait for love. It doesn't come. What comes is the ache of your torn flesh, the hot rush of afterbirth, the heavy knowledge that you must get up again soon. The baby latches to your breast and suckles with urgency. You grit your teeth. It feels like fire. Janin comes in, smells the air, and says only. She's small. You nod. You name her Elise, not after anyone, just because it's short and easy to say when your mouth is tired. Recovery is a lie. There is no recovery, only adjustment. You bleed for weeks. You shiver at night. You sweat through your linens, even when the air is cold. Your milk comes in slow, and Elise cries from hunger. Janin buys goat milk, but only when she screams loud enough to keep him from sleeping. You rock her in your arms until your back spasms. You eat whatever is left after the meals are done. Pot scrapings, crusts, broth too thin to name. The neighbor girl helps sometimes. She brings you barley cakes when her mother isn't watching. You don't say thank you. You just take her hand once and squeeze it. That's enough. Elise grows, slowly. Her belly swells from the goat milk. Her eyes open wider each week. She likes the sound of the well bucket. She kicks at the blankets. Sometimes, in the early morning when Janin is already in the field and you are feeding her, you almost smile, not from joy, from survival. Because she lived, because you did, because the snow is finally gone and the buds on the trees don't look dead anymore. That morning, you step outside for the first time in weeks with her in your arms. The sun is pale and warm. You stand still and feel it on your face, and for a moment, you are not wife or daughter or vessel. You are simply something alive. Then come the expectations, the return to work. Janin hands you a hoe and says, "Just weed the outer rows. You can rest when it rains." He does not offer to hold the baby. He does not ask if you can walk without bleeding. You tuck Elise into a sling against your chest and go to the fields. The first row is endless. Your legs shake, your breasts leak through the linen. The second row feels like punishment. By the third, you are back to counting like you did as a girl. Fence posts, clouds, the flies on your forearm. Anything to distract from the fact that your bones feel older than your years. At night, you stare at the ceiling again. It's the same ceiling. The knots in the same pattern, but you are not the same. Your body has changed. Your face has changed. Your breath comes heavier. The girl who feared her wedding night now fears what will happen when Janin wants another child. You know it will come, and you know what it will cost. But for now, Elise sleeps beside you. Her hand curls into yours. Her breath is steady. That is enough. You whisper to her softly, the words your mother never said to you. Be quiet, be strong, endure, because love in this world is not soft, it is survival, and you have learned to speak it fluently. Summer arrives like a blade sharp and punishing. The air thickens with flies, the grain itches against your skin, and the sweat never dries. Elise screams more now. You think it's the heat, or hunger, or maybe she just feels what you feel and doesn't know how to stay silent yet. You carry her in a sling as you dig, weed, feed, and mend. She cries while you beat the dust from your husband's tunic. She cries while you fetch water. She cries in your arms at night until you cry too, softly, facing the wall so she doesn't learn the habit. You've stopped expecting Janin to help. He eats, he works, he sleeps. The rest is your duty. He once muttered that God gave women strong hips for a reason. You've never wanted to strike someone so much. The priest preaches obedience again that Sunday. You stand in the back of the chapel, Elise heavy in your arms, while Father Gerald speaks of the holy union between man and wife. Wives, he says, submit to your husbands as unto the Lord. The women nod. The men nod harder. You don't move. You stare at the crucifix above the altar and think how even Christ had no wife to obey him. After Mass, the other women speak of herbs and sore backs and how many eggs were taken by the reeve this week. You say little. Your place is to listen. A good wife doesn't speak too much. That's what the old woman near the mill told you. She's had 7 children and buried 4. She smiles with one tooth and says, keep your mouth shut and your knees closed until they ask. When Elise begins to crawl, you begin to hope against reason. You think maybe she'll live past 2. Maybe she'll have your mother's voice, your sister's laugh. You begin to hum again while washing linens. You carve a tiny figure for her out of kindling, a crude doll with no face. You hide it under your bedding. You know if Janan sees it, he'll say it's a waste of time. She doesn't need toys, he grunts. She'll be married off before she grows teeth. You don't answer. But later, when you hold Elise against your hip and she gurgles at nothing in the distance, you whisper, "Not if I can help it. It's the closest you've come to defiance in months." Then comes the illness. First a cough, then a fever, then the soft, limp weight of her body refusing the morning light. You beg the midwife to return. She presses Elise's chest, opens her eyes, sniffs her breath. "Miasma," she says, "bad air from the waste pit. Maybe a blessing if it takes her early." You want to scream, but your mouth refuses. You sit by the fire all night, holding Elise against your skin, rocking her like a prayer. Her breath rasps. Her face is red and hot. You feed her honey water by drops. Janan says nothing. He doesn't know what to do with fear unless it can be hit. She survives. Somehow, the fever breaks just before dawn. You weep silently into her blanket. You don't tell anyone how you bribed the mill girl for fresh herbs, or how you bled your own arm to mix into the poultice, just in case the saints needed proof. She stirs in your arms, coughs, then sleeps. You are too tired to thank God, too tired to feel anything but a shaking kind of relief that settles into your bones like a bruise. In the days that follow, she begins to laugh again. Her voice is hoarse, but it carries. For the first time, you don't shush her. Janan notices the change in you. He doesn't like it. You don't know what gave it away. Maybe the way you stand straighter now, or how you meet his gaze without blinking. Maybe it's the way you hum again while working. He tells you one night, "You're getting proud. Don't forget your place." You nod, but inside, something refuses. Something has survived alongside Elise. You speak less, but you don't bend as easily. You watch the sky more. You remember your sister's voice, your mother's spinning wheel, the song you sang as a girl while fetching kindling in winter. You remember what it felt like to be yourself. And now you wonder what that self might become. You are no fool. You know you belong to this dirt, this man, this law. But you've also learned that obedience is not the same as surrender. That silence can be armor. That endurance can be a rebellion of its own. You plan to teach Elise how to make soap, how to fake sleep when danger enters the room, how to laugh quietly, and how to remember the names of things that matter. Because in a world where girls are sold for a cheese wheel and forgotten by 40, memory might be the only thing that lives longer than you. Autumn means work, relentless, bone-deep, breath-stealing work. The harvest must be gathered, stored, taxed. You wake before the sun, sore from sleeping on one side all night with Elise curled at your breast. The bread must rise while your hands are still cold. You crush oats with your shoulder aching, sling Elise to your back, and start hauling the grain sacks while the frost still grips the field edges. Janan says nothing, only points to where the gleaning should go and grunts when you move too slowly. He doesn't hit, but you have come to understand that not hitting is not the same as kindness. It's just economy. Pain takes time to heal, and time is food. When the reeve arrives to collect the tithe, Janan gives him the grain and the eggs and the hen without flinching. You flinch for him, not out of sympathy, out of calculation. You do the sums in your head. There will be little left, not enough for the winter, unless nothing goes wrong, and something always goes wrong. The reeve's apprentice looks at you too long as you carry the grain, his eyes sliding up and down your figure with a familiarity you didn't earn. You say nothing, but that night, when Elise is asleep and the house is quiet, you whisper to her, "Never let them see you bleed. They'll follow the trail." Your body still bleeds, but irregularly now. Something changed after Elise came. Sometimes the blood doesn't come for months. Sometimes it comes like a river. You hide it. You wash the cloth in the stream when no one's watching. You remember what your mother whispered once, only once, when her own blood vanished. It's the Lord's sign to be still, but the stillness burns. You feel the burn now. In your legs, in your back, in the way your breasts ache, even when Elise doesn't feed. You wonder if this is just what life becomes. A series of hurts, so familiar they stop feeling like pain and start feeling like weather. You begin to notice more than you speak. The way the miller's wife walks with a limp after feast days. The bruises half hidden under a girl's braid at market. The way the midwife's hands tremble when she lights a candle. You start counting how many women in the village smile with their mouths but not their eyes. It's most of them. You join them. The mask fits better now. Sometimes you practice it at night, turning your face in the low light until the curve is just right. A soft mouth, wide eyes, no threat. That's how you stay safe. That's how you stay useful. Janin has grown meaner since the harvest. He doesn't strike, not directly, but his words have a new edge. Useless if you can't breed again, he mutters one night, drunk on cider he bartered from the smith. Your belly's gone cold. You say nothing. You feel the old fire rise in your chest, but you swallow it whole, because you have no one to speak to it. Your sister is 3 villages away, wed to a man with fewer teeth but a harder hand. You have no mother left to run to. Just Elise. You look at your daughter and think, he's right. I am cold, but not empty. There is something living inside you still, and it's not another child. It's something harder to kill. When the snow comes early, you wrap Elise in your only wool shawl and feed her the last of the dried peas. Janin complains about the rationing, but he eats first. He always eats first. You gnaw the crusts after, boil water until the bottom of the pot blackens. Your feet crack from the cold. You rock Elise to sleep by the fire and whisper the saints' names, not because you believe, but because repetition keeps your voice from breaking. Some nights you think about walking, just walking until the trees swallow you, but you stay, because no one else will protect her. Not the law, not the church, not her father. By the time the winter deepens, you've made yourself into something new. Not softer, not harder, exactly, just more present, more awake. You save scraps of cloth in a hidden corner of the loft. You've begun stitching something, slowly, in secret, not for warmth, not for beauty, just for you, a thing that is yours, a secret shape. And in the quiet moments, when the fire is low and Elise's breath is steady, you run your fingers over the stitches and remind yourself you are not just a wife, not just a body. You are the record of everything you've endured, and that makes you dangerous in a way no one around you will ever understand. The world is white now. Snow weighs down the thatch, buries the path to the well, creeps under the door at night in cold little ghosts. The fire eats faster. The woodpile shrinks. Janin curses every time he sees it, but he never chops more. That's your job now too, since he twisted his knee falling on the ice. He calls it bad luck. You call it a kind of gift. He limps. You move freely. He complains. You observe. Every day he speaks. He gives away a piece of his fear. You listen carefully, because in a house ruled by men, listening is one of the last powers they never think to control. Elise is sick again. Just a cough this time. Nothing like the fever, but it rattles through the walls like a warning bell. You wrap her in everything soft you own. You keep a pouch of dried rosemary under her cot. You boil garlic in milk. You sing to her even when your voice is raw. The songs are nonsense, half-remembered things your mother hummed while kneading dough. But Elise listens. She watches your mouth like it means something more than sound. She reaches for your hair now when she cries. You let her tug it. You let her scream. Better her voice be strong than silent. Too many women are silent too soon. Janin grows more restless, the deeper the snow gets. Trapped men are dangerous. He drinks more, sits longer by the fire, staring at the flames like he's waiting for them to answer something. Sometimes he looks at you and says nothing, and that's worse than when he speaks. His silence is not like yours. Yours is useful. His is a storm that hasn't decided which direction to blow yet. One night, He throws the ladle against the wall when you serve him soup too thin. "Can't feed a dog on this," he snaps. "Then eat the dog," you mutter. He stands up so fast the stool falls. You stand too, and he hesitates. That hesitation is everything. After that night, things change. He doesn't say sorry. He doesn't speak about it at all, but he looks at you less, and you realize that he's afraid, not of you, exactly, but of what you might do if he stops being useful. That's the rule no one teaches. Power comes when someone needs you more than you need them. You've become essential. You manage the food, the fire, the child. You keep the house alive. He knows it, so he mutters less, shouts less. He still takes his place at the table first, but now he leaves a little in the pot for you. You don't thank him. You don't smile. You let him think that was his idea. You find ways to teach Elise without teaching. She watches you sort beans, and you name the colors out loud. She stares at the fire, and you tell her which saints hate liars. You show her how to tie knots with scraps of cord. For baskets, you say. But really, you want her hands to be clever. You want her to understand how things hold together, and how they break. She is too small to know what you're preparing her for. But one day she'll marry too, unless you stop it, unless you find a way. That thought grows in you like a second heart, beating louder each time she clutches your sleeve. When the snow begins to melt at last, you walk outside barefoot just to feel the mud again. It's cold and slick, and you almost fall, but you laugh. A small, strange noise that startles even you. Elise laughs too from the sling. A real laugh, high and giddy. It's the first time in weeks that her face has been more than quiet. You hold her close and turn your face to the sky. The clouds are breaking. The world is brown and gray and wet, but alive, and so are you, still standing, still carrying, still learning how to turn survival into something more than breath. Inside, the hearth still smokes. The walls still lean. Janin still drinks. But you are changing in ways he doesn't see. He thinks winter was hard on you. He doesn't realize it shaped you, pressed you into something denser, more dangerous. You no longer dream of escape. You dream of mastery, of outlasting, of teaching your daughter that being trapped is not the same as being powerless. And when the mud dries, when the trees bud again, when the air smells like thawed earth, you will not go back to who you were. You will rise, barefoot and ready, and this time you will not flinch when someone calls your name. The first signs of spring come in smell, not sight. Wet wood, thawed dung, the faint sweetness of rotted leaves turning soft underfoot. You kneel in the garden with your sleeves rolled, fingers red with cold, breaking apart the soil, while Elise plays with a chicken feather beside you. She babbles to herself, making a language out of sound. You nod along as if you understand. You find 3 stones, 2 grubs, and half a spoon someone lost before the snows. You pocket the spoon. Janin might throw it away. You keep it because it's small, because it was lost and you found it. That matters. The neighbors begin to visit again. The thaw makes people brave. The smith's wife brings news of a birth. Another girl, poor thing. The midwife complains about her bad hip and tells you not to get pregnant again until you're full in your body. You nod, but you know what she means? You're too thin, too tired, too close to breaking. You've started skipping meals again so Elise can eat first. You feel it in your joints, the way they pop when you kneel, the way your vision swims when you stand too fast. But you're still moving, still doing. That's what counts. You don't collapse. You endure. Janin asks for another child. He doesn't frame it as a question. He simply says, "It's time." You feel your teeth clench. You are 20 now, though you feel older. He doesn't look at your face when he says it. He's looking at your hips, at your hands perhaps, at what he thinks is his right. You do not argue. You wait until his cider runs out, until he's too busy repairing the shed, until Elise gets a cough again. Then you use every delay you've earned. You sleep light. You keep your back turned. You offer no warmth, And slowly, silently, he stops asking. You've learned that some battles aren't won by fighting. They're won by staying absolutely still. You learn more about herbs this spring. The miller's wife takes a liking to you and lets you walk with her on gathering days. You don't speak much. She doesn't need chatter. She needs someone who pays attention. She teaches you the look of foxglove and tansy, how to dry wormwood, what roots help bleeding, and what ones cause it. She never calls them by the words men use. She says, "This keeps the belly quiet," or "This one makes the month come back when it's hiding." You nod. You memorize. These are lessons women pass quietly, like seeds hand to hand. A lace walks now, wobbly, arms wide, fearless. She gets into everything: mud, ash, the henhouse. You chase her with laughter in your throat and fear just behind it. One stumble, one bad fall, and everything could change, but she's sturdy. She eats well when there's food. She sleeps curled beside you like a warm, breathing sack of flour. You sing to her still old songs, made-up songs, anything to fill the silence. Janine doesn't mind anymore. He's stopped expecting obedience in every detail. You've become too useful to replace. That's another rule no one tells you. Usefulness is a better shield than beauty. Beauty fades. Usefulness earns grudging respect. Then one day, a rider comes through. Not for you, not for anyone in particular, just a courier with a message for the reeve, maybe. But he brings news from beyond the next village. He speaks of war stirring in the south, of taxes rising, of a nobleman's son executed for heresy. You listen, while pretending to sweep. War means soldiers. Soldiers mean risk. You know what happens when they come through. Girls go missing. Animals vanish. Fields are trampled. But war also means men are taken to fight. And that means something else. Absences. Gaps. Opportunities. You watch the road after he leaves. You wonder what it would be like to see the world from the saddle instead of the doorway. You don't tell Janin what the rider said. Not yet. You tuck it away. You're building something. Not escape, not revenge, but understanding. Knowledge. Power isn't just who holds the land or owns the bread. It's who remembers, who listens, who waits. And you've waited long enough to know this. Marriage is not just a bond. It's a stage, a test, a set of walls with cracks in them. And now you see the cracks. You run your fingers along them in the dark, not to break free, yet, but to know where they are when the time comes. The second child comes to the house next door. A neighbor girl barely older than you were at your own wedding gives birth on a straw mat while her husband drinks in the shed. You help the midwife when no one else will. You boil the cloths, hold the girl's hand when the pains come too close together. She sobs into your shoulder. She screams her mother's name, though her mother died last Lent. You don't tell her to hush. You just keep her breathing. And when the baby finally comes, red, wet, silent, you slap its feet hard until it howls. The girl weeps with relief. You cut the cord. You tie it tight. You wrap the child and place it on her chest. She says, "I thought I was dying." You say, "You were." After, the midwife gives you a nod. That's all. No praise, no smile. But it's more than you've ever gotten from Janin. You clean the blood, wash your hands in cold rainwater, and walk home with Elise pressed to your side. You pass the chapel, the well, the rotting post where notices are nailed. The world hasn't changed, but you have. You know something now. You know the pitch of a dying breath. You know how a womb turns. You know how to hold life in your hands and keep it. That knowing sits in your belly like a warm stone. Janin notices that you're quiet for days. He thinks you're tired. He's not wrong. But not in the way he assumes. You're thinking, weighing, replaying. You can't stop hearing the girl's screams, or the silence that followed, or the way the baby's eyes opened before its mouth. Elise plays in the ashes with a carved stick. You watch her and your mind splits. Half of you here, half of you still in that shed, cutting a cord with a rusted knife. You hum to yourself, not to soothe Elise, to calm the part of you that knows too much now, to go back to not knowing. The Reeves wife dies in her sleep. No warning, no fever, just stillness in the morning. She was younger than your mother. Word spreads fast. Some say she sinned in secret. Others say she ate spoiled fish. You say nothing. But you notice how fast her place is filled. 3 days after the burial, the Reeve is speaking to a widow from the next village. She's older, with sharp eyes, and no children left. You see her measuring the house with her gaze, even before she enters it. You understand it now. Marriage is less about love and more about recovery. A man loses a wife the way a field loses a plow. It must be replaced before the next season. The mill catches fire a week later. No one knows how. Sparks from the kiln, maybe? You watch the flames rise from the hilltop and wonder, not for the first time, how quickly things disappear. The fire eats everything: wood, grain, tools. The miller's son weeps openly. His father does not. His face is stone, carved by loss. No one helps. There's no spare timber, no time. Everyone just watches. That's the lesson you learned this week. When a life burns down, people don't run in. They stand at a distance and try not to catch the smoke. That night, you lie awake with Elise against your ribs and a plan in your mind. Not an escape, not yet, but a trial, a test. You will ask Janin to let you go to the next village alone, to trade eggs and thread for salt and new souls. He will hesitate, but you'll press. You'll promise to walk quick, to return before dark, to speak to no one but the vendor, and when he agrees, if he agrees, you'll know. You'll know what kind of leash you're really on. You'll measure its length in footsteps, in hours, in silence. You whisper the plan into Elise's hair while she sleeps. Her breath is warm on your collarbone. You trace circles on her back like the ones you used to draw in the dirt as a child. She stirs. You hush her gently. Almost, you say. Not sure what you mean. Not sure when, but you feel it, like a storm behind the hills. Like something bigger than yourself beginning to shift. You don't need freedom yet, just movement. Just proof that you still can. You wait 3 more days before you ask. It's after the noon meal. Janin has grease on his chin from the salted pork. Elise is asleep on your lap, head heavy against your arm. You keep your voice even. The salt's run out, you say. There's none to trade here. I can go to Crosby, just for a day. You don't look up from your stitching. You hold the words still, like eggs in a basket. Too hard, and they'll break. Too soft, and they'll be ignored. Janin doesn't answer right away. He picks at his teeth. Then he grunts, "Who'll mind the child? You've prepared for this. Old Mag at the mill. She owes me a favor." He grunts again. You don't press. That would ruin it. He agrees, the next morning. Not with words, but with silence. You gather your bundle before dawn. 6 eggs, 2 lengths of thread, a bit of cheese wrapped in oilcloth. You nurse Elise before leaving. Press your forehead to hers and whisper a story you've never told anyone about a deer you saw once as a girl, how it stared at you and didn't run, how it felt like being seen by something wild and patient. She blinks at you, too sleepy to understand. You leave her with Mag, who barely speaks but nods once, firm. You thank her with the cheese. You walk. The road is slick from last night's rain. Your feet are wet within the hour. Your bundle is tied close under your cloak. The cold air stings your throat. But it's not the weather you notice. It's the freedom. The space, the sheer strangeness of walking with no one watching, no hand guiding, no orders barked behind you. You breathe differently, slower, deeper. You pass a field of rotting turnips and see a hawk on a fence post. It does not fly away. You wonder if it knows what this means, to move under your own will, to go somewhere. Crossby is smaller than you remember. The houses are slouched from wind and time. The market is little more than 2 tables and a cart. But it feels like a city. You keep your hood up. You say little. You trade your eggs for salt, your thread for lye soap, the cloth wrapping your cheese for a new tin button. The man who gives it to you smiles too long. You don't smile back. You step away before he can say anything clever. That's the risk. Movement draws eyes. You feel the weight of them more now. You think of Elise and touch the pouch where you keep the button. It's sharp at the edges. That comforts you. You don't go straight home. You take a long way back through the lower path where the trees hang low. You move slow, not out of laziness, but to stretch the space you've earned. It's not just about the salt anymore. It's about the fact that he let you go, that you came back, that he'll see you return with the goods and think it was nothing. That is power when you do something dangerous and no one notices. You walk the last mile with your chin high, not enough to be proud, just enough to be sure. When you reach home, Meg hands you Elise without a word. Her eyes linger a moment longer than usual. You think she knows, not the full truth, but enough. That you're not just gathering, that you're measuring. You thank her again. You feed Elise warm mash from the pot, stroke her hair, and wait for Janin to speak. He doesn't. He just inspects the salt, nods, eats. Later that night, he reaches for you under the blanket. You flinch. Then you don't. You let him. You close your eyes and think of the hawk, the way it didn't fly, the way it simply watched. And when it's over, and his breathing goes slack, you open your eyes to the dark ceiling and say the words silently. I can leave. Not now, not soon. But the knowledge is planted, rooted, real. He let you go once, and now that door will always be there, just under the skin of the world, waiting for your hand. That is the beginning of the end, not of your marriage, but of your silence. After Crosby, everything feels different. Not louder, not brighter, just sharper. You notice how Janin watches the path more now, listens for your steps when you're away from the house. Not that he asks where you go, not directly. But when you return from fetching wood or visiting the miller's wife, he always comments on how long you were gone. It's not suspicion. Not yet. It's awareness. And awareness is dangerous, but also useful. You've learned this. If he's watching, then you're real to him. Not just a tool, not just a habit. That means you matter. And if you matter, you have leverage. Your second visit to Crosby comes easier. You don't ask this time. You state, the soap's nearly gone. I'll go again before market closes. He hesitates, just a beat too long, then says, fine, be back before dusk. That hesitation is victory. It means he considered saying no and chose not to. That choice will cost him, though he doesn't know it yet. You take Elise with you this time, the sling tight across your chest, her head bobbing with every step. She babbles louder now. You hush her gently. She's learning too. She just doesn't know what. At Crossby, you trade with the same vendor. You learn his rhythm, how he haggles, how far he'll go, what jokes he thinks are charming. You don't encourage him, but you don't rebuff him either. You let him believe you're simple, that you like the market, the smell of boiled barley, the feel of sun on your neck. Let him underestimate you. Let them all. That's how women survive, by being seen as less dangerous than they are. You leave with new pins, dried lavender, and news. Soldiers passed through 2 days ago, headed north. You nod as if it doesn't matter, but you file it away. War means change. Change means opportunity. Elise is asleep by the time you return. Janin is already in his cups, cider sweet and mellow. He doesn't ask what you bought. He just nods at the lavender and mutters something about wasteful smells. You place the bundle by the hearth and make supper. You don't fight him. You don't argue. You're not trying to win his approval. You're trying to make him dependent. And slowly he is. He's used to the taste of your bread, the way you dry his socks by the fire, the way Elise sleeps through the night now. You are no longer replaceable. And that is a kind of power no man names aloud, but all of them know. In the evenings, you begin to speak more. Not much, not loud, but enough. Little things. Mag says the hens are laying early this year. The Reeves sister has a limp. The miller's son was seen crying behind the chapel. Small facts, harmless on the surface. But they remind Janin you see things he doesn't, that you know things. You become his eyes and ears without ever offering him your heart. You fill his cup, and he drinks without wondering what you've withheld. He believes you loyal. He doesn't understand that you're invested, not devoted. There's a difference. Elise starts to walk faster now. She climbs, laughs, falls, and climbs again. You watch her closely. You teach her where not to go, what corners of the village carry danger, what faces not to trust. You show her how to braid twine, how to hide herbs in a hem, how to boil water twice before washing wounds. These are not skills for a girl. These are skills for a woman who may one day be trapped like you. You hope she won't need them, but you teach her anyway. Because hoping isn't the same as preparing. And if this life has taught you anything, it's that the ones who prepare are the ones who survive. Then, one night, a knock on the door after dark. A rare thing. It's the miller's wife, clutching a cloth bundle soaked through. Blood, you think immediately. She doesn't speak, just looks at you, eyes wide, hands trembling. You pull her inside without asking. You take the bundle. A boy, not more than 2, pale and limp. You lay him by the fire. You work without speaking. Water, rags, pressure. The wound is shallow, head split on a rock. He lives, he stirs, he cries. You bandage him, whisper calm, and wrap him tight. Only after, as the woman weeps into her hands, do you realize what you've done. You saved a life, in your own home, with your hands, and not just for yourself this time. By morning, the miller's wife is gone, child wrapped to her chest, eyes swollen but dry. She says nothing about what happened. You don't press. In this world, questions are debts. You only nod, place a crust of bread in her hand, and watch her go. Elise is still sleeping. Janin is already gone to the shed. For a moment, the house is silent in the way only a home can be when something sacred has passed through. Not joy, not grace, but something closer to significance. The feeling that the ground has shifted slightly beneath your bare feet, and no one else felt it but you. By week's end, 3 women have stopped by with bundles, excuses, questions they don't quite ask aloud. One needs a poultice for her husband's shoulder. One claims she forgot how to treat cradle scald. The third just says her sister's daughter bleeds too much in spring. You give them what they came for, whether they say it or not. Dried herbs, boiled cloth, words said low and without weight. They never linger. They never say thank you. But each time they leave, you find something left behind. A sweet root tucked into your firewood, a spool of thread left beside the door, an onion in the wash basin. Nothing grand, just quiet payments for quiet services. Janin notices the visitors. They think you're a healer now, he says one evening, pulling off his boots. You shrug. They're just women. We speak. We help. He narrows his eyes, but says nothing. You've learned the art of being too small to argue with, too useful to ignore. You speak softly, move steadily, and never draw attention that isn't already owed. He complains less now. Sometimes after long days, he even asks you questions about weather, planting, how much flour is left. Not affection, not trust, just necessity. But necessity is better than affection. Affection fades, need holds. Word travels without effort. You become a kind of village shadow, not feared, not praised, simply counted. People begin to assume you know more than you say. That, too, is power. When someone tells you a rumor, they lower their voice. When you speak, they listen closer. You could ruin someone with a sentence if you wanted to, but you don't. Not yet. You've seen what happens to women who act too quickly. The widow near the woods, called a witch. The shepherd's daughter who grew too bold, married off to a man twice her age, and sent to another village. No, you'll wait. That's what they never teach men. How patience works like poison in a cup, slow and unstoppable. Elise watches you more now. Not with the wide eyes of a baby, but with the cautious study of a girl learning where she fits in a world that wasn't made for her. She mimics your hands when you braid rope. She stirs the pot when you cook. She knows which weeds not to touch. When Janin raises his voice, even slightly, she puts her arms around your knee and does not cry. You want to tell her it's not always like this, but you won't lie, because it is always like this. For girls, for women, unless they change it. One morning, you find a hen dead neck broken, feathers wet, fox maybe, or a boy with too much time and no one to watch him. Janin curses. You bury the bird behind the shed, and later that evening, you find yourself scratching words into a bit of bark. Nothing formal, just thoughts. A list of names. Those who've come to you, those who might. You hide it in the hearth's crack, beneath a loose stone. No one would think to look there, not in the place meant for burning. That night, Janin reaches for you again. You let him. Not because you want to, but because you choose to let him. There's a difference. You've claimed that difference. It gives you space to think while his hands fumble and his breath stinks of ale. You stare at the ceiling and count the knots in the rafters. 22, same as always. But now, when you count them, you think of routes, of miles, of people who owe you favors, and doors that might open, given the right push. You are still here, still his wife, still poor, still bound. But inside, you are writing the first lines of your own laws. Spring brings mud and gossip. The road between your village and Crosby is finally passable again, which means the market wakes up, and so do the mouths of those who've had nothing but themselves to whisper about all winter. At the well, you hear the same stories twice over. A girl in Fairmarsh ran off with a soldier, leaving behind a bonnet and a half-full cradle. A merchant's wife was found in the stable, with the baker's son, and now pretends she fainted from heat. The Reeves' new wife walks with her eyes fixed to the ground, and always says yes before she's asked anything. The other women talk with wide eyes and sharp tongues, but you're listening for something different. Not the scandal. The reaction. Who lingers too long on certain details. Who crosses their arms when a name is spoken. Who smiles without smiling. The words tell one story. The faces tell another. You keep both. Janin's moods shift with the thaw. The damp in the air settles into his joints like guilt. He works harder, splitting logs with a kind of bitterness, scratching furrows deeper into the bean rows than needed. He drinks more, too. Not enough to collapse, but enough to slur a few words before he passes out near the fire. When the cider runs dry, he curses loud enough to wake Elise. She cries. You soothe her. He doesn't apologize. He never has. But he stays outside longer the next day. That's something. You use the silence well. You plant onions with care. You dry linens in the sun. You sort through your little bundles of herbs, refilling what's low. You keep writing. Not a diary, no. Something leaner, sharper, not meant for sentiment, just survival. Names, patterns, promises. 2 women come to you this month. One with a split lip. One with silence clinging to her like wet wool. Neither offers an explanation. Neither needs to. You've seen it enough times. You make them tea, you boil cloth. You let them sit by the fire until their breathing slows. You braid one's hair so she doesn't have to lift her arm. You wrap the other's wrist and tell her the sprain should heal if she keeps from lifting with it. When they leave, you make a mark. Not a name, just a symbol. Only you understand. Your tally grows. It's not just healing, you realize. It's witnessing. You're keeping a record of women the world tried to erase before their time. A record of your own refusal to let them vanish quietly. Elise has begun asking questions. Not the sweet, simple ones. These are sharper, shaped by the things she sees and doesn't yet understand. Why do men eat first? Why do some girls stop talking? Why did Mag say her mother burned her feet? You answer carefully. Never with lies. Never with too much truth. You let her wonder. That is its own kind of education. You teach her the names of plants, the saints that bless stubborn girls, and the difference between being quiet and being silenced. She watches everything. She already knows that danger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hums. Sometimes it pours cider and smiles. Janan's brother arrives one wet afternoon with a donkey cart, and bad news. He brings word of conscription moving north, names being drawn from townships close enough to touch yours. He jokes about how lucky Janan is. A soft life, eh? Mud, a roof, and a quiet wife. You smile at the right moment. You offer cider, but inside your heart pounds. If Janan's name is drawn, if war reaches this far, it will change everything. A soldier's wife gains legal protections. A soldier's widow gains freedom land sometimes, or at least the right to speak in court. It's a dangerous thing to want such luck, but you don't turn from the thought. You let it sit in your belly like a stone and see if it warms. That night, Janan says nothing for a long time. Elise is asleep. The fire crackles low. He stares at the flames and says, almost too quietly to hear, "You weren't meant for this. You don't move." "What do you mean? This mud, this house, this dullness?" His voice is tired, not tender. "You move like someone waiting for something." He doesn't say it with love. He says it like a man who's just realized his house was built on shifting earth. You say nothing. You don't trust your mouth not to betray you. Maybe he meant it as a threat. Maybe he meant it as truth. Maybe he didn't mean it at all, just said what came because silence scared him. He sleeps with his back to you. You don't close your eyes. You sit up instead, on the edge of the hearth, and run your fingers along the scrap of bark hidden beneath the stones. You don't take it out. You just touch it. That's enough. A reminder, a totem, a record of things done, things witnessed, things survived. You're not waiting. Not anymore. You're preparing. And that's not the same thing. Waiting is still. Preparing is sharp. And you've become sharp, quiet as a knife in a wool sleeve, waiting for the day someone forgets how dangerous you are. You know the shape of your days before they begin. Dawn light through the wattle slats, the soft cough of chickens, the sound of your own body creaking upright before your mind is fully awake. Janan snores in the corner, one leg twisted under the blanket. You feed the hearth first, always the fire, then the child, then yourself, then the man. That is the order the world has taught you. But lately, you notice how little it takes to undo it. One skipped step, one turned shoulder, one extra moment at the hearth before you kneel by the cradle. That's how power changes hands. Not all at once, but by 100 tiny rearrangements. No one thinks to stop. The villagers whisper more now, but not about you, not yet. About the war edging closer, about taxes rising, about another wife in Fairmarsh found with bruises and no explanation. The midwife says nothing, but her silence is heavy with names. You continue your work as if none of it touches you. You gather nettle, dry lemon balm, boil willow bark for aches. You teach Elise to fold cloth square and straight, to sweep in silence, to watch with her mouth closed. She's learning fast, faster than you want. She mimics your stillness. You wonder if that's a gift or a curse. One morning, Janan returns from the fields with blood on his palm. A slice from the hoe blade. He holds it out to you like a man presenting tribute. You clean it without a word, pressing cloth to the wound with more care than needed. You feel his eyes on your face, waiting for a reaction. For softness, for some version of the girl he married. She's long gone, but you've left her ghost behind for occasions like this. You smile just enough to be remembered as gentle, and in that moment, he relaxes. You realize that being underestimated is one of the last protections still available to women like you. You spend your afternoons gathering stories now as much as herbs. People talk to you more freely than before. You're not quite friend, not quite threat. You exist in that sacred middle space where women trade truth without confession. The Reeves' new wife stops by with a spindle and a stiff smile. She doesn't say she's frightened, but her hands shake when she accepts tea. The girl with the yellow ribbon speaks of a cousin who disappeared after refusing a marriage. You nod. You don't write anything down in front of them, but you remember. Your memory is your ledger now. That week, the chaplain gives a sermon about obedient wives, fire and brimstone for the faithless, but honeyed words for those who keep order. You sit in the back, Elise squirming in your lap, and stare straight at the altar. You don't blink, you don't breathe too loud. Afterward, the chaplain approaches you, mentions that you haven't brought any eggs for the tithe this season. You apologize sweetly and lie. The hens are late. He nods but lingers. His eyes are not a priest's eyes. They measure, they judge. You step slightly in front of Elise. He notices. He says nothing and leaves. You feel the sweat under your shawl. You grip Elise's hand the entire walk home. That night, you stay up after Janie sleeps. You light the tiniest flame you can manage and take the bark scroll from the hearthstone. You add a name. The priest. You don't know what he's done. Not yet. But you know what kind of man hesitates just a second too long after asking about your hens. You write slow, intentional. Then you whisper a sentence you haven't said aloud before. I am not meant to stay here. It feels heavy, final, true, not a wish, a statement, a fact waiting for the right season to unfold. You go to sleep with the bark clutched in your hand and your daughter's breath warm against your back. The hearth is low. The night is still. But inside you something has started to catch, something hotter than fear and slower than fire. And once it starts, you know it won't go out. Not this time. You see her near the well, 3 days after the new moon. Her face is too still. Her dress is clean but badly mended, thread showing where no one cared if the stitches held. She isn't from your village. You'd remember. She draws water without speaking, doesn't look at the other women, doesn't glance up even when someone stumbles and curses. Just works the bucket, turns, walks. You watch her walk away with the gait of someone used to punishment. Not bruises, punishment. Her silence isn't shyness, it's survival. You say nothing. You don't follow. But you watch where she goes. Later at the mill. You ask Mag if she's seen the girl before. Mag grunts. Belongs to one of the tanners. Married in last winter. Quiet one. Then she adds, without looking up, too quiet. That's all she says. That's all she has to say. You stir the mash and let the words settle. You know too well what too quiet means. The kind of quiet you've carried like stones in your chest. The kind that isn't stillness, but fear too deep for sound. Back home, Janin is in a better mood. A new tool from his brother. A fresh wheel of cheese from the cooper's wife. Traded for 2 hours of your sewing. He eats with both hands, then drinks until his jaw slackens. He tells you he heard from someone that they'll be needing more bodies for levee patrols. Not here yet, but soon. He laughs, says they won't take him with his knee. Not unless they want to lose a war before it starts. You nod. You ask careful questions. Do they know which villages? When? Who's in charge of the lists? He doesn't notice your tone, or if he does, he doesn't care. He answers like a man who assumes you're only listening out of habit. You lie awake that night and think about the girl at the well. You try to picture her face, but only remember her shoulders, how they sloped like sacks, hung too long in the rain. You wonder what she's waiting for. If she's waiting, or if she's already gone somewhere inside herself. You think of all the women you've known who vanished before they left. You make another mark on your hidden bark scroll. Not for her specifically, for the idea of her, for what she represents. A reminder that not every story gets told with blood. Some are written in absences. Elise has started humming to herself when she plays. Little nonsense melodies, tuneless and full of odd pauses. You don't stop her. You listen. The music comforts you more than it should. There's something about it that reminds you of when you were very small, before marriage, before blood, before rules that broke you open. You hum along once, and she stops, smiles. You smile back. That night, when she sleeps, you sing the tune alone by the hearth, softly, a hymn for no god, just yourself. At market, you see the girl again. Same dress, same gait. She doesn't meet your eye, but she walks near enough that you smell her. Soap, ash, and something faintly metallic. You reach into your bundle, draw out a small pouch of marigold and thyme, and step toward her. For burns, you say quietly, not looking at her. She doesn't pause, doesn't take it. But an hour later, when you check the spot where you left it on the stall edge, it's gone. That's enough. That's all the consent there is in this world sometimes. That evening, Janin mutters something about you getting too friendly with strangers. Folk will start to think you know things. He doesn't say it like a compliment. He doesn't say it like a joke, just drops it in the air and watches it hang. You reply with a shrug, a dull, heavy-lidded shrug, the same kind he gives when he wants to be left alone. You've learned that shrug. You've mastered it. You know now what it's like to live inside a silence so complete. Even your enemy can't hear you moving. Rain comes hard this week, heavy and cold enough to drive everyone indoors. It drums on the thatch like hoofbeats. Janin curses when the roof drips. Elise whines when her play is confined to a few square feet near the hearth. You mend linens in silence, pricking your thumb on the needle and watching the blood beat up like a warning. The village shrinks in the rain, voices lower, visits cease. People begin to look inward, and when they look inward, they stop seeing each other. That's when secrets grow best, when the sky is too gray for noticing. The girl from the tannery, her name is Sella, you learn, starts coming by, not often, not openly. She never speaks unless spoken to. She asks for things with her eyes, a twist of yarrow, a handful of mint, a second glance that lingers just long enough to mean thank you. You never press, you give her what she doesn't name, and when she doesn't show for a full week, you worry more than you expect. When she finally returns, her lip is split. Her hands tremble when she holds the teacup. Elise tries to braid her sleeve, and she flinches so violently the cup spills. You clean it. You say nothing. You offer her your own shawl to wrap around her shoulders. She doesn't cry, doesn't apologize, just sits, rigid, until her breath slows. Then she stands, returns the cup to its hook without being told, and leaves. She doesn't take the shawl. You keep it, folded, next to the hearth, in case she ever returns without warmth. Janin watches her go from the field's edge. Later he asks, what does she want? You say, nothing. He grunts. You add, she's too thin, probably hungry. That satisfies him. Men are comfortable with women being hungry. The midwife dies the next night, quietly. In her sleep, they say, she was old, but not frail. Still worked the cord, still boiled root for fevers. Her death hits the village like a gap in a wall. Sudden exposure. Women gather in hushed circles to ask what will happen now. Who will take over? Who will keep the records? Who will know what to do when the child comes early or the bleeding won't stop? You don't speak at first, but they start to turn to you, not all at once, but often enough that your name begins to replace hers in quiet spaces. You keep your hands busy, but you're listening. Every offer of help comes with a glance, a weighing. You're not one of them, not entirely. You're still Janin's wife, still the woman who walks alone with her child and doesn't cry in public. But they've seen what you can do. They know you didn't ask for this power. And maybe that makes it safer. Maybe that's why the girl with the bruised hip leans into your shoulder at the well. Why the carpenter's widow leaves you half a loaf on your sill with no explanation. The weight of the village's needs is shifting, and you are part of the counterbalance. You mark the midwife's passing in your scroll, but not with a symbol, with a name. The first in months. You carve it carefully. She was hard, blunt, but she knew what the world did to girls. and she stayed anyway. That's a kind of strength, no sermon praises. That's the kind of woman you pray to now. When the wind howls and the rafters groan, and your daughter sleeps beside you with her hands curled like roots, you lie awake that night and think about all the things no one saw the midwife do. The bottles she buried, the secrets she carried, the way she always seemed to know which women wanted help and which only wanted someone to nod along while they endured. You wonder if you'll be able to tell the difference, if the village will let you learn, or if they'll call you healer one day and witch the next. Either way, you're not afraid anymore. You just want to be ready. The midwife's death leaves a silence you can hear through the soil. Not just absence, but unease. Her little cottage sits dark now, shutters closed, smoke gone from the chimney. Some women leave dried herbs on her doorstep. Others avert their eyes. The priest mutters a few words at Sunday gathering, but he doesn't name her. He doesn't bless her tools. He doesn't bury them. You hear whispers about that, about what's become of her old ledger, the one she kept tucked behind the hearthstone, marked in chalk and secrets. No one finds it. Or maybe someone does, and says nothing. You watch, you wait. Sometimes silence is more instructive than shouting. They don't ask you outright, not at first. It starts with a glance at the market. Is this safe for fevers? Or a hand brushing yours with quiet urgency? What would you give a child with a burning head? You answer like it's casual, like you're still just a wife, a helper, not a woman absorbing everything the midwife left behind. You don't correct them when they bring you the wrong root. You let them mispronounce the herbs. You say, let's see what we can do, we. It matters. You make it feel collective, like you're not becoming the center of something. But you are. Janin notices, in his own way, not with questions, but with tension, a stiffness in his shoulders, a deeper frown, when he returns from the field to find someone sitting at your table, a longer silence after supper, when Elise whispers stories you don't stop her from inventing. You're getting bold, he says one evening, after a widow leaves with a satchel of stitched cloth and dried comfrey. You keep your eyes on the needle in your hand. There's no one else to help them. You're not a healer, he replies. No, you say softly, but they don't seem to mind. And it's true, they don't. They come more now, especially after dusk, when their husbands are asleep or too drunk to notice. One woman asks you to feel her belly, too round, too soon. Another asks for help, ending what she doesn't name. You say little, but you give what you have. One girl brings you bread, still warm, and leaves it without a word. Later you find a small carving tucked inside the crust, an animal, crude but sweet, a fox. You keep it, tuck it beside your scroll, a symbol for things clever, quiet, and cornered. There are rumors, of course. There always are. The Reeves' wife doesn't speak to you anymore. The priest glances twice when you enter chapel. You hear your name once in the wrong mouth, spoken too loud, too sharp. You don't confront it. You just take note. You know how quickly a woman's usefulness can be rebranded as threat. That's why you never act alone. When you gather yarrow, you bring a neighbor. When you offer advice, you include another voice. You stay part of the group, even as you steer it. That's the only way power works for a woman in your place, through others, through whispers, through care disguised as duty. One night, Elise wakes from a bad dream. You sit beside her, combing her hair with your fingers. Was I bad? She asks, groggy, voice thick with tears. No, you say, instantly, firmly. No, little fox, you were just afraid. She wraps her arms around your waist and falls back asleep. You don't move. You stare into the fire and think of how no one ever told you that truth when you were small. How many things were made to feel like your fault. You stroke her back and promise not aloud, not foolishly, but with the weight of your body, that she will know better. You're not free, not yet. But freedom, you realize, might not look like a road. It might not be escape at all. It might be this, holding steady in the center, while the world spins just a little differently. because of you. You think of the midwife, of how she stood in the gap between survival and shame for so many. You think of the girl with the bruised hip, now walking straighter, of Sela, who hasn't flinched in 3 weeks, of Janan, who now speaks to you not as master, but as someone who knows she might know more than him. And in the firelight, with your daughter's breath against your ribs and the scroll tucked under your spine, you think, this is how a woman becomes a legend. Not in song, not in war, but in the quiet way she shifts a village just by standing where no one thought she should. The weather breaks. Sun stretches longer across the fields. Rain pools shrink into hardened tracks, and the paths dry enough to walk without cursing. You notice everything blooming again, not just the trees, but the people. Men talk louder, drink faster. Boys throw stones for sport. Women smile more in public, but glance behind them more often too. Life always returns, with spring, but so does risk. You walk slower now through the village, not out of weariness, but watchfulness. You feel eyes on you more than you used to, some curious, some grateful, some weighing. Selah comes back one afternoon, holding nothing but a bruised wrist and a tight jaw. I didn't fall, she says before you ask. I told him I was leaving. You pour hot water, you bandage the joint. You say, where will you go? She doesn't answer. I could stay with Mag, she says, though it's more of a question than a plan. You nod. That night you bring a message to Mag yourself, under the pretense of trading oil. You speak plainly. Mag listens without blinking. She'll keep her head down, she asks. You nod. Then it's done. When you return home, Janan is drunker than usual. Not violent, just heavy with some stew of old grief and cheap cider. He asks, why do you care so much about girls that don't belong to you? You answer, because no one ever cared when it was me. He doesn't speak after that. You don't explain further. You finish your work. You fold the cloth. You tuck Elise in, kiss her cheek, and leave your answer hanging in the air like smoke. You've learned that some truths don't need repetition. They just need to exist. People talk more freely in your presence now. Not as if you're friend or family, but as if you matter. One woman offers her son to help repair your thatch, unasked. Another leaves a pot of stew by mistake. These aren't gifts, they're offerings. Currency in a system of quiet allegiance. You start to understand what the midwife felt all those years. The loneliness of being needed. The weight of seeing pain before anyone admits it. It's not glamorous. There are no songs, just tired eyes and full hands and a sense that if you don't hold the line, no one else will. One evening, the priest stops you on the road. You've been busy, he says. You smile, polite, neutral. The village keeps kneading. And you think it's your place, he asks. Not angry, curious. Like a man testing a knife's edge with his thumb. It's not about place, you answer. It's about who's left when others turn away. He looks at you too long. Be careful, he says finally. There are things the church does not bless. You reply with a nod. Not submission, acknowledgement. You've heard warnings before. They don't sting the way they used to. That night, you sit beside the fire and take out your scroll. You add a new mark, neither name nor symbol, a circle with a bar through it, the first of its kind. Not for an act, for a moment, for the feeling that something invisible has shifted and may never shift back. You stare at the mark a long time. You realize it's the first one that scares you a little, not because of what might come, but because of what it might require of you. The village doesn't call you midwife or healer. Not yet. But they come to you. They knock on your door. They say your name with careful hope. You never wanted power, but you've become responsible for it. And if the time comes to choose between peace and protection, between safety and truth, you know now what you'll do. You will not run. You will not stay silent. You will not vanish the way women before you did. Not unless they drag you screaming. And even then, they'll remember the sound. The first birth comes at night, under clouds too thick for moonlight. They knock softly, Just 3 taps, and you're already up. Elise stirs, but you hush her and dress in the dark. It's the baker's daughter, 16, barely. Married last harvest to a man who laughs too loud and drinks too fast. You gather your things: boiled cloth, oil, string, salt. You have no tools of metal or wood, only hands. But they're steady now. You've prepared for this, even if you never asked to. When you arrive, she's already sweating through her shift, face pale as curdled milk. The room smells like blood and candle wax. Her mother weeps quietly in the corner. The husband paces outside, muttering prayers he barely remembers. You say nothing at first, just work, boil water, strip linens, speak low, steady words while the girl clenches her teeth. It's not fast, but it's clean. The baby comes after dawn, blue for a breath, then red and screaming. A boy. You wrap him tight and press him into his mother's shaking arms. She doesn't smile. She just stares, stunned and hollow-eyed. You remember that feeling, the chasm between child and motherhood. You say nothing. There's nothing to say that wouldn't sound like a lie. They pay you in bread and boiled wool. You don't ask for more. The mother offers you a worn ribbon. You nod and take it, part gift, part peace offering. No one says the word midwife, but by the next day, half the village knows. You hear your name said differently now, not louder, but with intention. You've entered a new role, whether you wanted to or not. You don't complain, you don't rejoice. You just fold the ribbon into your scroll box and light the fire with steady hands. Janin says nothing about the birth. He notices the wool, the bread, the exhaustion in your limbs. He says, if they're going to use you like that, they ought to pay properly. You blink. That's as close to permission as you'll get. He doesn't ask where you go at night anymore. Maybe because he knows you'll go regardless. Or maybe he's grown used to the idea that people turn to you now in ways they never did to him. That stings, you think, but not enough to make him stop you. And that's all the protection you need. A week later, a cart overturns on the road to cross by. You're the one they fetch. Not the priest, not the reeve. You arrive before the man bleeds out. The wound is jagged but shallow. You bind it. You speak over him while he groans. You clean blood with ash and cloth, and by the time it's done, he's pale but breathing. You return home with your sleeves stained and your fingers aching. Elise hands you a sprig of lavender. For your smell, she says. You nearly weep. Not from pain, from knowing she sees you. The reeve visits that evening, not with threat, yet, but with presence, a reminder. He says he's grateful for your help, but that such matters should be overseen by those properly trained. You nod. You offer him cider. You do not ask what training he thinks qualifies for bleeding and screams. You let him feel in charge, and when he leaves, you add his name to your scroll. Not as danger, not yet, just as a man who thinks the edge of a woman's power is his to define. That night, Elise has another nightmare. You hold her tight until she stills. Then you sit by the fire, your hands wrapped around your knees, and wonder how far this can go, how long you can walk this thin line between reverence and suspicion, between service and threat. The fire crackles. Outside, the wind picks up. Inside, you're calm, centered, not safe, never safe. But awake? They come in threes now, never all at once, never by design, but by rhythm. A mother with a fevered child, a girl with late bleeding, a man too ashamed to ask directly, so he sends his sister. You learn to recognize the knock before the door opens. You've become known not as healer, not as witch, not as saint, but as the one who helps when the others won't. That kind of reputation is slow to grow and fast to burn. But for now, they still come. One morning, Meg sends word, Seela has vanished. Not packed, not run. Vanished. Her husband claims she left in the night. Her shawl is gone, so is a knife. Meg's expression says she believes one part of that story. You walk the edge of the woods that evening, basket in hand like always. You're not looking for Sela. You're looking for what isn't there. You find no signs of a struggle, but something about the air feels wrong. Not haunted, emptied. You kneel and pick a sprig of sagebrush anyway. If someone sees, they'll assume you're gathering. Let them. That night, Janan watches you as you peel onions. He says, they'll come for you if they think you know more than they do. You keep your eyes on the blade. They already do, you say. It's not defiance, it's fact. He nods once, says nothing more. You've noticed the shift in him. Not softer, not crueler, just aware. He treats you like something heavy he has to carry carefully now. Like a sealed jar he doesn't want to break, but also doesn't want to open. At chapel, the priest's sermon is about Eve. Again, temptation, sin, obedience. The story told so often it becomes texture, not meaning. But this time, his gaze lands on you too long during the part about women who overstep. You don't look away, you don't blink, and when he fumbles over his words, you let your face remain still, unreadable. That's how it begins, the soft alarm in a man's mind when a woman refuses to flinch. Later, the blacksmith's wife brings you a gift, not flowers, not food, a book, old, illegible in parts, Latin on the cover. You flip through and find sketches, plants, roots, tools, not instructions, exactly, not spells, but knowledge. My grandmother had it, she said it was for midwives, or witches, or maybe both. You look at the curling script, faded by time and fire. You nod, you accept. You do not thank her aloud. You simply press the book to your chest and feel how long it's been since you held something made for you. That night, Elise crawls into bed and asks, "Are we the same as the other families?" You pause. Why? Because people look at you different. You think for a long moment, then you say, "We are the same in what we need, not in what we give." She frowns, small brow wrinkling. "Is that bad?" "No," you say. "That's how people survive, by knowing what they can give when others can't." She nods like she understands. Maybe she does, maybe that's the problem. You sit by the fire after she sleeps, the book on your lap, the scroll in your hand. You don't mark anything tonight. No names, no events, just the date. The quiet sense that something has begun to tilt in the village. No open threat, no hammer strike, just the shifting weight of how many people know your name now, and how few of them can say it without something hanging on the end. The second birth comes with a scream at midnight. This time, they run to your door without knocking. A boy barely 12 shouts your name, breathless. It's Elsbeth. She's early. You don't ask how early. You grab your bundle. You wake Elise and tell her to stay near Janan. She nods. She doesn't cry. She's used to this now. Too used to it. You make a mental note to teach her more about poultices, about signs in the blood, about when silence is safety and when it's betrayal. She'll need to know, whether she wants to or not. Elspeth is barely more than a girl, married at 14 to a man with a gray beard and trembling hands. Her mother is gone. Her sisters live 2 villages over. No one else has come. She clutches your wrist like a drowning woman. "Please don't let me die." You don't say you'll try. You say, "You won't." And then you make it true. It's long, ugly. The baby is breech. You push. She screams. You speak to her in the voice you never heard as a child. The one that promises calmly that survival is a choice. The baby is small, alive. Elspeth is torn but breathing. When she sees the child, she doesn't weep. She laughs. It sounds like someone breaking. You return home at dawn. Your hands are raw. Your skirt is stiff with blood. Janan watches from the doorway, says nothing, just passes you a cup of water and a strip of cloth. Elise stares up at you with solemn eyes. "Did the baby live?" Yes, and the mother? Yes. She nods, then says, "You're not like the other mothers." You can't tell if it's admiration or warning. You say, "Neither are you." She smiles faintly. And in that moment, you believe you might have saved more than one life. The next day, the Reeve sends word. He wants to speak with you. Not publicly, not formally. Just a conversation, he says. You go because to refuse would draw more suspicion. His house is larger than most, with rugs on the floor and meat on the table. He gestures for you to sit. "People say you've taken the midwife's place," he begins. You don't correct him. "That wasn't my plan," you say instead, "but the village needs." He nods, slowly, then leans forward. "There are rules, old ones, written down, about women like you." He lets that hang. You feel the shape of the trap, but not its teeth. "What kind of women?" you ask. He smiles. Thin, practiced, helpful, respected, watched. Another pause. "We don't want a witch burning. We want peace. It's a threat wrapped in courtesy." You nod. "Then let them be helped." You rise. You do not thank him. You do not ask for his blessing. And you don't flinch when he watches you leave. That night, you burn the cloth from Elsbeth's birth. Not because it's cursed, but because it's sacred. You don't want the village to make a shrine of you. You want them to forget the details and remember only this: she was there and someone lived. That's the closest thing to holiness you believe in now. You sit by the hearth, the scroll in your hand, and make a new mark. A line that crosses another line, neither name nor symbol. A crossroads, a choice, the place where protection begins to cost something. The fire crackles. Elise hums in her sleep. Janin snores from the corner, quieter than usual. And you stare into the flames and think, "I didn't want this power. But now that I have it, I will not give it back." Spring passes into summer. The village ripens. Grain, gossip, secrets. The chapel bells ring louder, more often. The priest's sermons are sharper now and shorter. You hear words like modesty and obedience more frequently, but always, always wrapped in pleasantries. No one names you outright. They don't have to. You've become a presence, known, necessary, quietly resented. You've replaced the midwife, but not in name. No one calls you that. They call you her in conversations not meant for your ears. Or they don't refer to you at all, like an illness or a god. You deliver another child by candlelight, a breach again. The mother sobs with every contraction, begs for her dead mother, for saints, for you. And you stay until the baby comes, limp but breathing. You blow gently against his lips. He wails. The father weeps, and when it's done, they give you a single copper coin and 2 apples. You take them. Not because it's fair, because it means they can't forget what you did. Every coin is proof they believed you could save them. Every payment, a quiet confession. Janin asks fewer questions now. He doesn't wait up anymore. Sometimes you find the fire lit when you return. Sometimes Elise is already asleep in his lap. It's not tenderness exactly, it's adjustment. He's adapting, like the others. He knows you're no longer only his wife. He knows the village relies on you in ways he never will be relied on. Some nights, you see it in his face, that flicker of defeat, that dull recognition that the power he thought was his has bled somewhere else. He doesn't hit you, he doesn't shout, but he doesn't touch you either. Not in weeks. Selah returns. Not to the village, but to you. She's thinner, paler, but alive. She doesn't say where she's been. You don't ask. She gives you dried mint and nettle root. You give her a pair of worn shoes and a map scratched into bark. A way north. A name to speak in an abbey that owes you a kindness. She doesn't cry, just places a hand on your shoulder and holds it there. And in that silence, you feel something like absolution, or maybe just understanding. By midsummer, they stop knocking. They enter. Quietly, respectfully, like stepping into a shrine. You deliver 3 more babies, treat 5 fevers, and prepare 2 bodies for burial. 1 child, 1 wife. You don't weep anymore. Not in front of them. Not at death. Not at life. Only sometimes, when Elise sings to herself in the corner, and her voice sounds like hope you didn't mean to grow. The priest sends for you, not to scold, to beg. His sister is sick. You go. You treat her. You leave without comment. That Sunday his sermon changes. Still the same God, but less fire, more water. He doesn't meet your eyes when he speaks. You don't smile. You don't need to. You make one final mark on your scroll. Not a name, not a warning. A spiral. Slow and wide. Endless. Not a threat, not a promise. Just truth. The truth that you've become something no one planned for. A woman whose story can't be unwritten. And when you go to sleep that night, Elise curled against your side, Janin snoring softly by the shutter, the fire low and breathing beside you. You think, this is not the life I chose, but it is the one I claimed. And in claiming it, you made it your own.